not about defunding. We're about funding and providing the additional services you need beyond someone with a gun strapped to their shoulder, to their hip. We need more social workers. We need more mental health workers.
President Biden there in New York City earlier today trying to shrug off the notion that he's soft on crime. And also you heard the new mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, talking about the problem with gun crime. Let's bring in our panel, Fox News media analyst and host of Fox's Media Buzz, Howard Kurtz, Leslie Marshall, Democratic strategist, and Matthew Continetti, fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. You could be forgiven for having whiplash to a degree because all of this talk on the left about defunding the police has now become about refunding the police. But Matthew, the president's focused almost exclusively on guns today doesn't really tell the whole story.
It doesn't tell the whole story, John, and it won't be enough to stop this big political problem that's emerging on the Democratic side. When we look at public opinion data, we show that we find that the Republicans are winning the crime issue. That is, the public trusts Republicans to deal with crime better than Democrats. Part of that is the defund the police slogans of a couple years ago. Part of that is the gun politics, that people just don't think guns are the issue, criminals are the issue. And so what Biden will need to do is eventually turn against these Soros progressive non-prosecutors in the cities who are like Alvin Bragg in Manhattan, who are purposely not going after low-level offenders. And until he does that, this problem will continue to grow.
Yeah, Leslie, we had Andy McCarthy on my program, America's Newsroom. That's not my program. That's Dina Perina's program, along with Bill Hemmer. America Reports. And he was suggesting, the same as Matthew was saying, that, look, you're missing the full picture here if you focus on gun crime. There, Leslie, that you can go after guns all you want, but if these prosecutors continue to be soft on crime and not allow the police to do their jobs, crime will continue.
You know, I wrote a piece for Fox last week or the week before on this, and I somewhat agree with Andy and with Matthew as well. You know, guns are a problem, especially these ghost guns, but it's not the only problem. Crime, like many other issues in our country, is multifaceted, it's comprehensive, and you need a comprehensive, multifaceted plan to go forward. But one of the things you need is money, a lot more of it, a lot more cash infused into states, into cities, to help hire more police officers, so to help with those community nonviolent programs that they really need assistance with, especially in a city like New York. And we're seeing over $1.6 billion come from the Department of Justice. We're seeing more money come from the president. And I have to say that as a Democrat, I almost want to chuckle when somebody says Joe Biden's soft on crime. I remember all the grief he got for being too tough on crime 26 years ago and since with that crime bill.
Well, I got to tell you, I am impressed by that rare moment of agreement. I'm going to go get the s'more sticks, the marshmallows and chocolate. I'll be right back. Our Dr. Jeanette Nashwat, Howie, had some thoughts on this. In a Fox News op-ed, she said, control the criminals responsible for this plague. We cannot accept a slap on the wrist for armed burglary. It may be a burglary now, but next time a life may be lost. We are incentivizing crime and ushering in violence when we don't hold criminals accountable for their actions. A murderer should never roam the streets. Yet these people are not being held in jail. They're back out in the streets again.
A lot of states and cities have policies that are way too lenient, and this is a ticking political time bomb for the Democrats. And Joe Biden is vulnerable because it hasn't been able to pass his police reform bill, his gun legislation. Yes, he's promising some new money. I agree that, you know, he obviously pushed that 1994 crime bill, but the blunt fact is this. Violent crime is primarily a local law enforcement problem. Yes, big city Democratic mayors and DAs, some of them have utterly failed. But while the fact is that no president can solve crime on the streets of New York and Chicago and Los Angeles and San Francisco, he can throw some money, but police departments don't want Washington telling them what to do.
All right, let's go to the Haji Abdullah raid last night that killed the current leader of ISIS. Here's what President Biden said about it earlier today.
Last night's operation took a major terrorist leader off the battlefield, and it sent a strong message to terrorists around the world. We will come after you and find you.
Matthew, your thoughts on this? On the surface, it looks good, but people have some concerns that we couldn't do it everywhere, particularly Afghanistan.
Well, look, remember that over-the-horizon capability we were promised in Afghanistan has not emerged, but I applaud the president for this raid, which demonstrates that Islamic terrorism continues to be a grave threat to our national security. And I also think it's a very good demonstration of the range and effectiveness of the American military in the midst of these manifold crises in Ukraine, in Iran, and in China and Taiwan.
Yeah, Leslie, I want to jump to Ukraine as well, because troubling news out of the Pentagon today. John Kirby, the spokesman for the Pentagon, saying that Russia looks like it is going to mount some sort of a false flag operation as a precursor to drawing itself into war with Ukraine. Listen to what he said.
The Russians are likely to want to fabricate a pretext for an invasion, which again is right out of their playbook. We believe that Russia would produce a very graphic propaganda video, which would include corpses and actors that would be depicting mourners and images of destroyed locations, as well as military equipment at the hands of Ukraine or the West.
Our allies in the United Kingdom are worried about this as well. The UK Foreign Office saying we have high confidence that Russia is planning to engineer a pretext blaming Ukraine in order to justify a Russian incursion. Are we ready for this, Leslie?
I think we are ready for this. I mean, we have the greatest military in the world, and this is an area where we both have Democrats and Republicans come together, bipartisan support, even though that doesn't make headlines. Look, we know that Russia doesn't want to be looked at not only by Ukrainians, but by the international community as invaders. So what do? If they put out this false flag video and say, hey, Ukraine, Ukraine struck first, we're just defending ourselves. We've seen this happen elsewhere in the world. Sadly, it's very effective. Perhaps the UK, the United States, and other allies who will come forward, I would imagine, in the coming days, speaking of this, might put Russia a bit on alert that, the jig's up. We already know your game, so don't play it.
All right, well, we'll see if that has any effect. Howie, I want to go to you with something that's a little off topic here, and that is the lack of coverage by the mainstream media of this bombshell report that came out of Johns Hopkins the other day that showed only a 0.2% decrease in deaths from coronavirus because of all of the lockdowns. Our Marta McCary last night was saying on Tucker Carlson, Johns Hopkins didn't even put out a press release. What's going on?
Well, it goes against the media narrative. And I did a quick Google search, John, to see who had covered this Johns Hopkins study. And I came up with Daily Mail, New York Post, Fox News, Fortune, and TV stations in Gainesville and San Diego. I guess a lot of major news organizations didn't want to embrace the idea that everything that we all went through, certainly in 2020, locking down, mask mandates and the like, may have had very little effect on the death rate, although there were also questions about hospitalizations, and this was a study of studies. But I think the fact that no press release was put out, nobody jumped on it, says to you that a lot of people in journalism didn't want to hear this, although I think the winds have shifted now. Nobody in 2022 wants to go back to the lockdown policies of the past.
Yeah, and as we were pointing out earlier, with countries like Sweden now joining other European nations in lifting all coronavirus restrictions, the pressure is going to be on our political leaders here to do the same thing. Howie, Leslie, Matthew, always good to see you. We'll see you again soon. Thank you.